So, greetings, brothers and sisters. It's a pleasure to once again continue our studies as usual. This is our Thursday tradition. It's become like our church. So we come every Thursday here to read the book, which is the Conscious Study Group, book written by Osage called Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And the book is called Conscientism. And Conscientism or Conscientism is actually not only a book title. It is with a philosophy and ideology for decolonizing Africa. So Kwame Nkrumah put his philosophy and ideology for decolonizing Africa in this book. And then he actually suggests if we have to decolonize Africa, then consensus and the texts and the thinking written in this book is very relevant for us to grasp it so that we can use it to actually liberate Africa, decolonize Africa. The key purpose of a decolonized continent, and we'll look at it later, revolve around three. One is about the liberation of a territory, which is the liberation of Africa. Some will argue that Africa got its independence, therefore it's no longer colonized. But decolonizing Africa goes beyond colonialism to even neo-colonialism. And that's one of the key aspects of this philosophy and ideology is about the liberation of Africa, which Nkrumah argued that is very fundamental and very necessary for our territory to be liberated. And he goes extra mile to discuss how our territory is liberated and introduce two aspects that will meet in the future based on our reading, chapter 3 and chapter 4, what he calls positive action versus negative actions. And positive actions are actually revolutionary forces, while negative actions are counter-revolutionary forces. And as you've learned before, that a territory is consisted of what you call dialectics. So in any country or in any state, there's a dialectics or a competition between the positive forces versus the negative forces. It's always a struggle between the revolutionary and the counter-revolutionary. And in order to have a totally liberated country or a state, that state should have more positive action outweighing negative action. So the more we get more revolutionary forces coming in, the more the counter-revolutionary forces go down. As it is currently in the continent, the counter-revolutionary forces are more than the revolutionary forces, and therefore the continent at all is not totally liberated, apart from the new struggles that are coming from Sahel, where we see the more positive action more than the negative actions. And therefore this, as I've said, is not just a book. It's a philosophy and ideology. And it starts very clearly from the introduction where Nkrumah introduced education and the purpose of education towards the liberation. He introduced that by saying a colonial student. He gave us examples of various colonial students. Those Africans who got education, one by either the virtue of their family status in a society, one got it automatically, while others got it because they had the ability, while others just got opportunity to study due to their struggles. And he says that out of that, he recommends that education should be for the purpose of liberation and emancipating the continent. And he says he's part of those students who pursue education for the purpose of emancipation of the continent. And therefore, he recommends from that beginning that we need to understand, we either the current elites or learned or educated Pan-Africans, why are we educated? How are we using our education? Is it for class differences, for matters of either prestige in our family? Is it for us to be conservatives, or we have education for the purpose to be liberals? But actually, it refers to the third categories of what we call the radicals and progressive Pan-Africans. He then takes us to chapter 1, where he looks at philosophy in retrospect. And that's why we discuss and ask ourselves several questions. What is the universe made up of? This universe we live in, what is it made up of? Is it made up of matter? Or is it made up of ideas and spirits? So we examine various philosophy, the Thales, the Berkeley's. We look at various philosophy and we look at now how, as Nkrumah concludes, that our universe is a natural universe with its basic law being matter. So we see how matter can then move through what we call categorical conversion. We look at things like what we call constructionism and nominalism. We go through the extent of inside-outside thesis. We look at so many aspects of philosophy. But the reality is that matter is the primary reality. It's not the sole reality. When you say matter is a primary reality, we mean from matter there are other realities that exist. And these realities are actually what we call either spiritualism or idealism. But Nkrumah explained clearly that everything, even what we call spiritualism, originates from matter. And matter is what is physical, what's abstract. Those can be our physical resources, our physical land, everything else we have. That if you want to attain what we call idealism or spirituality or spiritual fulfillment, we must take more consideration of what is physical. Your body, friends, the environment, those are what constitute the universe. So we discussed that. Then now chapter 2, we've gone to what we call philosophy and society. And they're looking how philosophy are shaping various society. We look at Anaximander, we've gone to the Greek society, we look at Aristotle, we look at Socrates, we look at Thales, we look at Descartes, we look at Leibniz. We look at so many things like John Stuart Mill, we've gone to John Locke, we look at so many of them. And last time in our class, we actually looked at how the differences between the conflict between those who are materialists and those who are idealists led to the French Revolution. What we call dialectics or strife in a society, where one group of philosophers are trying to be more materialist and another group of philosophers are trying to be more idealist. So that is it, and that's where we've gone so far. It has taken us sometimes, all the journey I've described has taken us around 2 years doing that, and we hope to continue doing this until we finish the book. So once again, permit me to recognize your presence once again. Welcome, Brother Barry, welcome General Nunaki, welcome Sister Aida. Said is one of the oldest sisters in the room. In fact, I found him in the study class and she's been consistent to the struggle. As Sankara says, women hold the other side or the other half of revolution. And there's no true revolution without the liberation of women. So we appreciate you, Sister Aida. And we also have Brother Simon. We have Sir Windhoek. And we also have another progressive sister who has also joined us and been consistent in our classes, Sister Tapua. For almost now a year, she's always been consistent to our classes. So thank you very much, comrades, and welcome to our Thursday class. I'll say, and I said before, this appears to be our Thursday church. It's like we attend to our sermon on a weekly basis, and we come here for our nourishment, mental nourishment, so that we can critically examine, look at the happenings on the continent, and be able to formulate the best way forward to decolonize Africa. So thank you very much, comrades. With that, permit me to know who might be willing to read for us the paragraphs highlighted, which is then now continue what we call social contention. You see how social contention led to revolutions in French society, and you're still going on with the aspect of social contention. Anybody who is willing to please go ahead and read for us the paragraph for today.
Is that Abua?
Yes, I can read. Hello, everyone.
Hello, sister. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the social contention in philosophy became explicit, especially as law, politics, economics, and ethics came to be publicly funded on philosophy. The social contention of philosophy was accepted even as late as the Russian Revolution of 1917. It is therefore not a little amazing that in the 20th century, Western philosophers should largely disinherit themselves and affect an aristocratic professional unconcern over the social realities of the day. Even the ethical philosophers say that it is not their concern to improve themselves or anybody else. They restrict their calling to disputable elucidations of moral terms, which we all know how to use correctly. They say that their professional job begins and ends with the elucidation of the meaning of moral terms and principles and the source of moral obligation. They never purport to support and maintain any moral principles. In fact, some of them sometimes confess their inability to see or admit any difference between the statement of moral principles and brute ejaculation. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sister Tapua, for the reading. Permit me to go back a bit and do now the previous paragraph, and you see how we can tie to this paragraph as we go ahead. Now, in the previous paragraph, we read about in the previous paragraph, we read about the paragraphs cited above, and I'll read them briefly. It says that the intellectual tension had been mounting for 100 years or more. There was the libertines, who were the French free thinkers, who had suffered persecution and crisis after crisis. In the 1624, the Parliament of Paris, obedient to the church, restrained certain chemists from disseminating anti-Aristotelian theses. Uncanonical doctrines were proscribed, and their libertine disseminators were abused as immoralists, tricksters, hypocrites who publicly profess religion but in private undermined it. The Jesuits touched new heights of violence and rarely when they dealt with the libertines, who naturally did not turn the other cheek but delivered their reposts with the full edge of their wit, accusing the schoolmen of forgery, vanity, emptiness, and uselessness. This dichotomy in French thought cleft the nation seriously, and Hout, Faucher, and Pascal contributed to this dichotomy as against Malebranche and Montaigne. By 1789, the divergence had hardened seriously, and only a revolution could reshuffle French thought and deal it anew. Now we move forward to the same social contention here, which if you look at very well, the social contention started some time back with the Cartesians. And in fact, if you read this paragraph here, and Nkrumah says, before I come to this paragraph we've read today, in this paragraph here, Nkrumah says that by multiple examples, to show how there is social contention, implicit or explicit, in the thoughts of philosophers. The history of philosophy, as I have sketched it earlier on, suddenly enjoyed a transfusion of blood and springs to life. These philosophies appear in situ, not as abstract, ethereal systems, but as intellectual weapons implying social purpose. That's when the social contention comes into being. Now today, we are reading this paragraph, which of course is Tapua has read for us, which states, and I read it again slowly, that in the 18th and 19th centuries, the social contention in philosophy now became explicit, especially as law, politics, economics, and ethics came to be publicly founded on philosophy. The social contention of philosophy was accepted even as late as the Russian Revolution of 1917. It is therefore not a little amazing that in the 20th century, Western philosophers should largely disinherit themselves and affect an aristocratic professionals and concern over social realities of the day. Even the ethical philosophers say that it is not their concern to improve themselves or anybody else. They restrict their calling to disputable elucidations of moral terms, which we all know how to use correctly. They say that their professional jobs begin and ends with elucidation of the meanings of moral terms and principles, and the source of moral obligation. They never purport to support and maintain any moral principles. In fact, some of them sometimes confess their inability to see or admit any difference between the statement of moral principle and brute ejaculation. That's where we end our reading today, and we want to share our thinking in regards to this. But before we do that, permit me to know whether there's any word that any of us feel we should look for the meaning for, like we did last time. And just to notify members that in our Pan-African library, I ensured that I shared the philosophy and the books of both Pascal, Hout, Faucher, Malebran, and Montaigne. All their books, I've already shared them in our Pan-African library. So let me get to the words that need our meanings or our definition before we go forward. Hope you are all clear with the word social contention. But for that purpose, I need just to do a research again on social contention. I'm not saying a direct meaning. Anybody who might have a contention, any direct meaning of contention? But I think it's very simple. But anybody who can express it, Tapua, are you able to explain what is social contention?
I think it's the differences in ideas between two or more sections of society. So you have one group saying one thing, another group saying the other thing. That's contention.
So it's a contention in relation to society.
Yes. And
Okay.
so social perspectives, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody want to add something in regards to that before I look for the next meaning of elucidation? I know some might want to know the meaning of elucidation, just for the purpose. But elucidation is explanation that makes something clear, just a clarification or interpretation. That's the meaning of elucidation or explanation. Hope that also help. Is there any word that we might need to know the meaning before we start? And I think that's so far what we could ask. Sister Ida, do you have any word you want us to check the meaning?
None that I'd like to repeat. No, I think I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, now we've read this.
Can somebody maybe contextualize a brute ejaculation in this text?
I'm so
Would I
glad a man said that.
say that?
I said, I'm so glad a man said that, because that's what I said. None I'd like to repeat. Thank you.
Will one say abortion, deserting, not following on it?
The only other thing I could think of is like aircraft seats that, people get ejected from. But that wasn't the word that was used, so I wasn't sure what exactly. Thank you.
It's very. You see, they say a brute. I look at the meaning of brute, which is characterized by absence of reasoning. So they say that, in fact, some of them sometimes confess their inability to see or admit any difference between the statement of moral principles and unreasonable ejaculations, which in this context is just, let me try to look for it, but brute means unreasonable. Without reason is absence of reason or absence of intelligence.
Brute, is it not with sheer force?
Yes.
With absolute force?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just, in this context, it can be used just for the purpose of just speaking or parroting without any reasoning, or just arguing without any reasoning. That's what it can come out to be.
A passionate arguing.
Yeah, so, yes, Sister Tapua, what are you saying?
I was saying we could equate it to passionate arguing.
Yeah, yeah, that would be also another better reference. So, Brother Cook has put in the chat that a social contention refers to a collective political struggle encompassing various forms of protest, social movements, and other contentious interactions, often involving competing claims and interests. So, social contention, in a broad sense, is the expression of conflict and disagreement within the society. As Sister Tapua, you are trying to put it. So it can include either protest, strike, riot, social movement, revolutions, or any other things. So that's the social contention. And as we've explained, brute ejaculation is just argument for this argument's sake without any proper reasoning for that argument. So yes, now who is ready to go first to share with us their thinking in regards to this? Sister Myra, feel most welcome. Who is ready to go first?
are centuries counted?
Yes?
How are centuries counted?
A century should be 100 years.
Yes.
Like now, if you say in the 18th century, which years are those?
Well, we're now in the 20th century, so it was 200 years ago.
No. Sister Tapu, are we not in
300.
Sister Ida, are we not in 21st century?
Aren't we in the 21st? Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry. Hey, sorry. Most of my life has been 20th, so sorry.
Yeah, so 21st century is the century that started with 2000 moving forward.
So 18th is 1900, 19 to 20.
Yeah, 19 to 20.
Mhm.
And 19th is which one?
Now you
20
see,
to 21.
it's always a year behind. So when you talk of, it's like between the year of 1700 to 1800 is the 18th century. 1800 to 1900 is 19th century. 1900 to 2000 is the 20th century. 2000 moving forward is the 21st century.
Yeah, I see where my brother is coming from there.
Yes, so I want us to have this conversation a bit in line to this context as well. I know the issues are coming in, but when it says that in the 18th and 19th century, the social contention in the philosophy became explicit, which means those between the years of 1700 to the year of 1900. In between, so from 1700 to 1800, from 1801 to 1901, in between, the social contention in philosophy became explicit, which means the differences of thinking or thoughts within society, within the aspect of philosophy, became now very clear. And it became very clear because those are the periods between when now the law, politics, and economics, and even ethics were now publicly founded on philosophies. So the social contention of philosophy was not accepted as late as Russian Revolution of 1917, which meant it moved until as late as the 20th century in 1917. But you see, then is going ahead to say that it is therefore not a little amazing. It's therefore not a little amazing that in the 20th century, which now between the 1900 moving forward, the Western philosophers should largely disinherit themselves and affect an aristocratic profession and concern over their social realities of the day. So it's very clear difference here that the aspect of the social contention in philosophy was getting to wither off slowly by slowly as the century were moving on. But yes, can somebody share their thinking? Sister Tapua?
Yes, I'm just thinking that the period that's being referred to here is at the height of colonial domination. So that's when the philosophers disinherit themselves, because I suppose they rather sided with the church and the aristocrats because they were the ones spearheading the occupation and the colonial takeover, and therefore resorting to definitions of words, of terms, was for me a cowardly position, because they were saying to everyone, think about this. How do we define this particular term? Either to prompt the people who were being immoral to think about what it is that they were doing without being of it. But at the same time, because they were being so cowardly, it means they were, sorry to use the word, getting into bed with whatever was going on at that time.
Okay, Sister Tapua. Brother Kwame, just to let you know, I've lost the rights to share the screen. So you can either make me calls to continue sharing the book, and feel most welcome. You can, if you are able, maybe you can take over the chairship. Brother Kwame, just let me know. Brother Kwame? Hello, Brother Kwame, can you hear me?
How did Brother Kwame become host? Just because he logged on?
Yeah, he's logging on from the same account because he's having the right to the account. So that's what maybe made him to become a host immediately. But I hope he can work on that. Brother Kwame?
Yeah, brother Pigeon.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I am mobile, so I'm not able to host. That is I'll change that now. I don't know how that shouldn't have happened. It hasn't happened in the past, so that shouldn't have happened. Sister Ida, the answer to your question is because I am the main account
Yes,
holder.
I
It
hear,
makes me
I hear.
host. Yeah.
But because it never
Um,
happened before, I was just
yeah,
surprised.
yeah. That's what. Yeah, that's why I'm also surprised. So I'm trying to change that now. Give me a moment. Right. Sorry about that. Right. So make host. Yeah. Yeah. Confirm. I have altered that. Pigeon.
Yes, Brother Kwame, you've done that. So
Excellent. So can you proceed? I am mobile, so I won't be able to talk until I get home. Thank you.
okay, welcome. Thank you, Sister Tapua. But Brother Kwame, feel free to come in because we are trying to discuss some. It appears some heavy text here, but yes.
Yeah,
So
as I said, you continue. I will join as soon as I'm able to. Thank you.
thank you very much. Now, yes, Sister Tapua, you are sharing your thinking here, but again, I think the text is calling us to what really happens, because what then happens when you see the Western philosophers are trying to disinherit themselves and affect
I
an
think,
artistic profession.
I think that gives room for total colonization. It gives room for colonization without a conscience, because philosophers are supposed to be the mind behind whatever it is that's going on. So when the church puts pressure on them, they then renege on their expected position. And I think Kruma is highlighting this to show how total or how totally the philosophers just gave up, as it were, and just went along without wanting to challenge what was going on, especially because of how the French Revolution had taken place and what had happened in that context. That for the people who were crying freedom and liberty and everything else for themselves, then resorted to suppressing other people, I suppose shows to what extent they thought we were people enough to be afforded liberty, equality, and all that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Sister Tapua, what you're raising as well. Because you see, even when you continue to say that even ethical philosophers say that it is not their concern. Now, do you think, based on your thinking, You think that then what might have led this philosopher to give up in this aspect? Is it the push from the church? That much you had seen? Because remember, we've just come from the contention within the French society, where the Jesuits and the libertines are having serious contention.
Yes, because I'm looking at the first sentence of the second paragraph, which reads, "It is therefore not a little amazing that in the 20th century, Western philosophers should largely disinherit themselves and," that's an additional thought, "affect an aristocratic professional unconcern." It's almost as if they're showing their nose up. You know how higher class people tend to put their nose up to the lower class. That's what I feel the philosophers are doing here, because they're showing aristocratic, professional unconcern. They're aligning themselves with, they're being described as those people that were leading the colonization of the continent.
It's very interesting you're bringing the aristocratic aspect as well, Sister Tapua. Because remember, sometimes back we came across Aristotle, and the argument was that Aristotle never even challenged slavery or even inequalities within the society. In fact, he said he joined his Greek men to enslave others. And when he said he joined, probably it means, and that aspect, that the people who are being enslaved sometimes, some might have been from the society of Greek, but some were not. And that's why he joined his class at that particular moment to enslave others without even questioning inequalities and discrimination within a society, as much as he was trying to profess egalitarianism sometimes. So when you see that they then, when they disinherit themselves and they affect aristocratic professional, which means that then they join that level of what aristocratic thinking was all about, which was purely also endorsing the idealism in some level, if you can say that. And you see now, they say that I'm concerned over social realities of the day. There were social realities of the day, and I think what you're trying to say in this context, what could be these social realities of the day based on this context?
It's the expansion and the participation of Europeans in the occupation of parts of the world. That's the reality of their time during this point in time in their history. The expansionist, the Berlin Conference, the fighting for territory took prominence over conflict within Europe itself.
It's very interesting as well. But you see, even the extent on which these philosophers then disinherit themselves, the text says that they say that it is not their concern to improve themselves or anybody else. That's very strange.
Absolutely. Because before this period in time in history, philosophers were taking social positions, and although some of them were doing it under the table, they were still taking social positions. And because they were taking those explicit positions, that resulted in people, the French Revolution happening because of the clarity of thought that had been made possible by philosophers. Now they had a position to make the same people that had been helped to understand what liberty, freedom, and whatever else was, understand that occupation of foreign territory in this way, in the way they did it, in the way the Pope was saying needed to be questioned, but they could not. Or not that they could not, they would not, because they had self-interest, because they saw themselves benefiting from whatever was going on, and decided to play a menial role in trying to maintain position the position of philosophy in society and in shaping society.
It's very interesting. Just as come to end with you, Sister Tapua. But you see, Sister Tapua, again, this is, remember sometimes back again when you looked at Aristotle, if I can remember, Aristotle believed that some people are naturally slaves. And the period you're talking about here, during the centuries of course, exploitation, enslavement, and colonialism, is when one group of people are subjugating other group of people, and to an extent of even enslaving them. And when you see now philosophers giving into this in the level of Aristotelian thinking, and you see now they go ahead and says that, and that's why I ask when sometimes back when you came across Aristotle, and I think I asked Brother Connie had an issue as well, because Brother Carrington was saying maybe Aristotle took his position because he was afraid of the society. But then Brother Kwame say, what fear of? And I ask the question, what is the purpose of a philosopher? Is it just to bring a story of what's going on in the society? Or actually critically examine a society and give a solution to the societal problem, rather than just painting a big, good picture of how society looks like and you don't do anything? Because if you see the next line, which I also want to ask your thinking on, it says that they said that their professional job begins and ends with elucidation of the meaning of moral terms and principle and the source of moral obligation. They never purport to support and maintain any moral principles. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm actually shocked by that, because if we look at the first sentence on the second page, starting even the ethical philosophers say that it is not their concern to, we're thinking of improving society and everybody else, but they're saying it is not their concern to improve themselves. In other words, they've abrogated the responsibility to improving themselves as people or anybody else. This is where we're going to, we're moving away from philosophers thinking of society, of groups, to being individualistic. This is why we've been talking about how the European concept is not I am because you are, it is me. This is where philosophers are giving up to that idea that it is not their responsibility to look after either themselves or other people. Therefore, who are they looking after? This becomes fertile ground for capitalism and individualism, and you look after yourself and I'll look after myself.
That's quite interesting. And it's good you brought also the element of individualism, because these are very solipsist thinking, what you call solipsism, because they then get individual level. But now the end sentence, the end line in that sentence, which I also want to get you thinking before I move to the next person, says that in fact some of them sometimes confess their inability to see or admit any differences between statements of moral principles and brute ejaculation. My concern is, how did it reach to a level that they could not even see any differences? Because you are a philosopher, you know what you've learned, you know what's right. At what level does that what you know and then do not make any sense? Like you no longer even see, like everything now else seems to be normal to you. You don't know the difference between what is wrong and what is right. To you, you can say, I didn't see any difference. I don't even know what is wrong or right. I'm really wondering what might be going on here. But yes, what do you think about that?
Right. I'm going on to the sentence in the middle of the last paragraph there, which starts, they restrict their calling, they're calling it. I don't think it's a calling anymore at this point. They restrict their calling to disputable elucidation of moral terms, which we all know how to use correctly. It doesn't mean, Nkrumah doesn't say which some know. He's saying they resort to the obvious. they resort to telling us what we know already, instead of helping us to create a better society for all. They've just given up. This is why philosophy dies the way it does in Europe. This is why we are struggling as Africans with our philosophy to try and bring it to life, because they've lost theirs. They don't have any. So I'll end there.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. Anyone else want to go next? But thank you for at least sharing your thinking with us. It was very important to see what's going on here from your line of thought or your thinking. Let's hear what others also think.
Can
Yes.
I, Brother Pigeon? Yeah,
Yeah, Brother Kwame.
Can I quickly interject?
Yes.
For you to consider this statement, in line with what Tapua is sharing with us, could it be that they were not really interested, or they are not really interested in transforming society? They are happy with society as it is. They don't see the need to change anything. So I'd like to put that in for consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that angle. But yeah, from the possibility that these philosophers were happy as how the society was run or how it is. But again, it's very interesting how they could be happy. And it says, but the moment they disinherit themselves, they and then affect an aristocratic philosophy, which then actually embrace the hierarchical whatever system in a society, the superiority, which then was also sometimes embraced by the church mostly, as we have read before. And then my question then goes, if they were actually happy, if that could be the possibility, then how did they become happy with what's going on?
So Pigeon?
Yes.
So what I'm suggesting is that these philosophers all depend at this point. We are talking about, Nkrumah is referring to modern day philosophers, yeah? Not the Platos, Aristotles, and so on, who wanted to change society. Yeah, these ones, the ones we have today, are happy with the status quo. They're happy with the global white capitalist system. They are not interested in transforming it. Transforming for who? For you? Transforming for who? For Africans? Are you serious? Transforming for Asians? Transforming for Chinese? They're not interested in transforming the global white capitalist system. They're happy with it. And as Tapua mentioned, the individualism that underpins white capitalist supremacy is affirmed by the philosophers. We hear them all the time. So the aristocratic unconcern is basically saying that they behave like aristocrats. Aristocrats, as you know, don't really care about the common people. They are just interested in themselves, their families. Some of them even don't care about their families. They send their children to boarding schools so they can have a good life just by themselves and let the schools take care of them. They treat judges with disrespect. I mean, so they aristocratic in the sense that they didn't now, basically, yeah, they saw themselves, they didn't care about, just like aristocrats don't care about ordinary people. Aristocrats feel superior to the ordinary people. Aristocrats are at the top of the food chain, at the top of the nobility chain, the nobility pyramid. They don't care about those at the bottom. So that is what is meant there. So it's unconcerned, because the purpose of philosophy, as we have understood it again and again in Constantism, is that the purpose of philosophy is to change society. And Marx told us, he said philosophers have explained the world. The point is to change it. And the philosophers who are meant to lead the change are not interested, because they are happy with currently the global white capitalist system, period. And let me just finally say, who wrote Agenda 2025 for Trump? that document? Who wrote it?
Um,
It was the philosophers from the different institutions across America. They wrote that document. I don't even know if any of us have taken a look at that document. They wrote it. It was a philosopher that wrote that document, which Trump is not using. Let me pause there because of I'm still I'm not at home yet. I am still mobile, so I need to stop. Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
can I support? Can I provide
Yeah,
evidence?
Sister Tapua come in, then I'll go to other members. I'll go to Sister Ida, then I'll go to Sawindok. Sister Tapua?
Right. I'm just pointing out why the philosophers have now turned complicit. Because in the first paragraph that's highlighted, in the 18th and 19th century, the social contentions in philosophy became explicit. Why? Because they were publicly funded on philosophy. That's publicly funded there is really important because money is involved. They've been bought. That's how crude I'm going to say it. They could not go against their, the source of their bread and their butter. That's it.
Sorry, Sister Tapua. Sister Tapua,
Yes.
publicly founded.
Yes, publicly
Publicly
founded
founded.
on philosophy. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
based on, not necessarily funded.
Okay. Based on philosophy, publicly founded on philosophy. Because I'm looking at the situation where what's happening in Europe. Europe is getting very affluent based on what they're getting from other parts of the world. And there's competition to get that stuff and improve themselves. So what we have here is flow of wealth from one part of the world to their part of the world. And that position is supported by the church and the aristocrats. And therefore, the aristocrats and the church are money. Once they support a position, if we're saying founded on philosophy, we're talking about whose philosophy? Founded, what gives this philosophy strength?
Sister
The
Tapua,
power of people behind it, yes.
you are raising a very important question. On which philosophy was law, politics, economics, and ethics founded on? And that philosophy was idealist philosophy, which then advanced capitalism and exploitation. Because those are the ages of exploitation and enslavement.
Yes.
So their law were construed in a manner that then advanced their philosophy. Politics in the same way, economics was in the same way, and even ethics was in the same way. But now this became publicly, because before it was things that were silent, but everybody of their citizenry, to my thinking at that time, knew that very well the purpose of the law will come in with this for this purpose. You remember John Stuart Mill, when you read about him and the American Constitution? It was based on what? So this particular moment, I think when it comes to be founded on philosophy, the question you're raising is very important. On which philosophy? And we realize that this is the ages of exploitation and enslavement. So you can know which philosophy was then their law, their politics, and economics founded on.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, I'll come back to Sister Tapo, but let's Sawindo come in. Sawindo?
Yeah. This is too high for me. I really don't understand. What I partly understand is like the contemporary philosophers, as you like, just like Brother Kwame has said, they are no more interested. Their world is made, so to say. because they share the idea of white supremacy, what do you call that thing? White supremacy capitalist, or what do you call that thing? So they are no more in that drive of trying to change the world anymore. They are very content with the situation as it is. Because if they have to change it, they will have to change it for the oppressed. And they are not the oppressed, they are the oppressors. And they are comfortable with the status quo. So that's why they have aborted everything, even under the guise that they don't want to improve themselves. But it's just a guise, it's a camouflage, because they are already improved. I rest.
So, Sawindok, I want to catch up on your thoughts a bit. Now, what was the basis of social contention in a society? Those conflicting ideas. The basis was actually, as we've seen sometimes back, just to come up on it, there were philosophers, even as we read in the French, there were philosophers who thought materialist, while others thought idealist. So there was always a competition and a contention within the society. And they say, as we read in the previous paragraph, is such contention that led to, you see, like they are saying in the last paragraph, that and only a revolution could reshuffle French thought.
Yeah.
So it means revolutions could always take place and happen when there was that contention, and the contention was always between materialism and idealism.
Idealism, yeah.
And you see, that's what they're saying, even as later as the French Revolution of 1917. Now, after that century is over, now we are getting to a century where we must realize now this is the period, there's already abolishment of, I don't know, slave trade, there are those things, there's already now scrambled, the partitioning now is going on of the continent, and now the Western philosophers now are disinheriting themselves against the so-called philosophy anymore of the 21st century. And I think there's something in connection with this, because if you read the beginning of this book, Nkrumah starts the introduction part of it by saying colonial students were introduced to various. I just go back to it a bit, and I want to bring it in as I bring another speaker to come in, but there's an element of how this philosophy then affected our so-called educated people, who then becomes the philosophers of this century. There's somewhere where Nkrumah brings education a bit. Let me just point to it. Now you see, Nkrumah is saying from here. I'm sorry for taking you back a bit. Nkrumah is saying from here that let me take that to here. I'll come back to it a bit. Nkrumah says here that I was introduced to Plato himself as a student who joined the colonial schooling. I was introduced to Plato, Aristotle, Descartes, Kant, Hegel, Sisyphina, Nietzsche, Marx, and other immortals, to whom I should like to refer as the university philosophers. You remember these philosophers now transcending between the centuries. Now it says, but these Titanians were expounded in such a way that a student from a colony could easily find their breast agitated by conflicting attitudes. These attitudes could have effects which spread out over a whole society, should such a student finally pursue a political life. And you can see how majority of the founding presidents of Africa actually got exposed to the same educations. And some borrowed the idealist mentalities of philosophy. And when they came to be presidents of the continent, you see how they then multiplied that capitalism and idealism thinking. So you see, Nkrumah saying a colonial student does not by origin belong to the intellectual history, in which the university philosophers are such impressive landmarks. The colonial student can be seduced by these attempts to give a philosophical account of universe, but he surrenders his whole personality to them. When he does this, he loses sight of the fundamental social facts that he is a colonial subject. Now, even if you take this now back to the philosophers of 21st century or 20th century, You see how they are trying now to view the society. Even in the same society where they live in, they are actually a losing set of fundamentals. And that's why we are getting to the paragraph say that they even did not see the social realities. You see, they're losing sight to the fundamental social facts. In this way, he needs to draw his education and from the concern displayed by the great philosopher for human problems. Anything which he might relate to the very real problem of colonial domination, which as it happens condition the immediate life of every colonial Africans. So there's a way which I wanted to tie this with what happens to the purpose of colonialism, because you see, Nkrumah brings the element of exposure of these philosophies and how it affects various people. But then I would like to point this last part a bit, and this also brings us to the fundamental purpose of why, or what's the purpose, or what was the original purpose of philosophers. Nkrumah says, finally, there were a vast number of ordinary Africans who, animated by a lively national consciousness, sought knowledge as an instrument of national emancipation and integrity. That is not to say that these Africans overlook the purely cultural value of their studies, but in order that their cultural acquisition should be valuable, they needed to be capable of appreciating it as a free man, not a colonial or enslaved student. And they say he was one of these people. So just to bring back this introduction to the conversation we are having now, I think I can now relate it. Yes, Saundo?
Can you kindly read that last paragraph again?
Oh, the last paragraph.
Finally, yeah.
Now let me take you back there, because this is what I've been referring to the introduction. Now, in this last paragraph, Nkrumah has explained three types of persons or colonial students. So he says, finally, there were the vast numbers of ordinary Africans, who, animated by a lively national consciousness, sought knowledge as an instrument of national emancipation and integrity. This is not to say that these Africans overlooked the purely cultural values of their studies, but in order that their cultural acquisition should be valuable, they needed to be capable of appreciating it as a free man. And I was one of this number. So Nkrumah say he was one of this number. And this is the third category of students, because up here he has classified two categories of students. There are three categories. These are the three of them. The first one are these students who actually got scholarship.
Yeah.
And he said that many of them had been handpicked here. They had been handpicked, and so to say, they carried certificate of worthiness with them. These were considered fit to become enlightened servants of the colonial administration. The process by which this category of students became fit usually started at an early age. For infrequently, they had lost contact early in life with their traditional background. By reason of their lack of contact with their own roots, they became prone to accept some theory of universalism, provided it was expressed in vague, malicious terms. Vague terms. This is also almost equivalent to what we call brute ejaculations. Now it says, armed with their universalism, this first class of students, they carried away from their university courses an attitude entirely at variance with the concrete reality of their people and their struggle. When they came across doctrine of combative nature, now this is a class which also Kwame is saying aristocratic ones. When they came across doctrines of combative nature, like those of Marxism, they reduced them to arid abstractions, to common room subtleties. In this way, through the good graces of their colonialist patron, these students, now competent in the art of forming not a concrete environment view of social-political problem, but an abstract one, which is called liberal outlook, they began to fulfill the hopes and expectations of their guides and the guardians. And we know who they were. It goes to the second category. I'll read this, but go back to where we are. Now, the second category are a few colonial students who gain access to metropolitan universities almost as of right on account of their social standing. Now, instead of considering culture as a gift and a pleasure, the intellectuals who emerge therefrom now saw it as a personal distinction and privilege, the conservatives one. He might have suffered mild persecution at the hands of the colonialists, but hardly ever really in the flesh. From this humbly pedestal, he indulged in the history and sociology of his country, and thereby managed to preserve some measures of positive involvement with the national processes. It must, however, be obvious that the degree of national consciousness attained by him was not of such an order as to permit him full grasp of the law of historical development or of the thoroughgoing nature of the struggle to be waged if national independence was to be won. Sir Windhoek, I'll get back to you, but I want us to go back to the current paragraph. I wanted just to link it to this. Sir Windhoek?
Yeah. So now the category of students, you can almost tell that only a few will really African decolonization at heart. I think Africa is what it is today because our leaders do not lead from any philosophical point of view. The philosophy along which they are leading is the philosophy that has been aborted by the white capitalist, and it's not going to bring any change to Africa. And we are gaining education, not knowing what to do with it, but very big decors in our living rooms, and not to decolonize Africa with. I rest.
You see the correlation between that use of knowledge with these now philosophers who are trying to give up here and pretending they have nothing to do. But let me, Sister Taka, I'll come back to you. Permit me to go through other members here, please. And I'll come back to you. Okay. Brother Barry? Brother Barry? Brother Barry?
I think he has got a problem with the mic.
Okay. Sister Ida?
I think, sorry, let me get back to the page. I think that it looks like the philosophers of old weren't necessarily ordinary people. They were already aristocracy and people who sort of were in a certain class. I think there's a bit in the middle. Sorry, you got to caught me. They restrict their calling to disputable. I know Sister Tapa has already done this bit, but I half think that is the main bit of what we're reading. That you couldn't have been a philosopher in the first place if you weren't rich, and you couldn't have. Nobody would listen to you unless they knew who you were. So I don't think anybody who was an ordinary person could have become a philosopher. And to a certain extent, I hate to say it, but I don't think philosophers of today can come from people at ordinary working class people on the whole. I think that they come from a class that either they're very good in educational wise, so they can talk the talk. Because it even says that half the time they weren't interested. They say that their professional jobs begin and ends with elucidation of the means of moral terms and principles. So I think that, you know, they have to be able to just talk things, and they're not necessarily interested in what people might go out, grassroots people might go out on the streets to protest about. That they're a class of educational educationally privileged people, because I don't think that a lot of philosophers would come from everyday people. That's and when I say everyday people, people who have been less privileged. You know, you have to be able to talk and have a good education, all those sort of things. I think even today, and I think that is where philosophy came from.
But Sister Ida,
Yes.
are you finding the modern philosophers useless as the 21st philosophers rather than as the 80s and 19th philosophers?
I can't say that I know a lot of the modern day philosophers, but I do think that even modern day philosophers are people who would have an education that borders on I don't think it's I don't think that most people would go into philosophy today unless they're very good at what's at being able to talk the talk. That's the best I can say.
Now, I'd ask you that question in line with the argument put here on how the philosophers are trying to view their philosophy for this purpose. And look at philosophers beyond just those who have studied philosophy, but look at them as the top elites in their society, for example. For example,
I think I would say that in the past they were top elites. Nowadays, I think if you're very good educationally and can discuss things left, right, and center, whichever on any position, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you would be changing the way of thinking. It's I
yes,
think today it's more about being able to discuss whatever and bring old philosophers and other names into account. But I don't think philosophy today is about changing things. That
yes.
would be my opinion. But how many philosophers do I really know?
No, no, you are right, because what I'm trying to draw to your attention is the same thing that these philosophers of 20th century resorted to. That they're only restricted to calling of to disputable elucidation of moral terms. So their argument is just about meanings and terms of principles. That's what they talk about, you see. But again, the reason why I was drawing your attention to this, leave alone those who have done philosophy to be called philosophers. Look at the learned people in the continent, the professors. Just try to see them as other philosophers because maybe they have the highest level of education in a society. But you wonder that in fact, I believe the African continent has so many so-called professors. So many. Even some are in some countries that are performing poorly in the continent have so many professors. But you wonder what is the purpose of their professorship with the so-called education if that could not help to actually correct the society, or rather they have studied for the purpose of themselves. They don't care about anybody else. It's about my individual academic achievements. I'm a professor. So you are a professor in a country or in a society where people are poor, but you'll come and profess some English to them and some terms and tell them so many things and argue. But that your professorship is not translated towards helping improve the welfare of the people. How do you see that?
Well, I think that you see, I think yeah, there are lots of professors, but you see, I think that there are a small number of philosophers. I think that's the difference. That because there's a smaller number, in fact, maybe you could say the same about professors, because there's a smaller number at the top of whatever course or course that they're professors of. It makes them an elite within their group. And I think philosophy is even worse than the professors of different academic groups, because how many people can say they are philosophers, or how many people will even do the course to go down the route of philosophy? So I think that they're an even more privileged group than, say, philosophers of history, geography, or maybe even economics, because there are lots of undergraduates who do economics. So all of those lots are in an elite system today, but I think it was even worse in the past. And all those centuries that you were talking about, they were the people who were um, arist were aristocrat wealthy. They were the wealthy group because most people couldn't even afford to go to universities in those days. So
Yes, yes, Sister Ida, because you see, I don't believe that people like Socrates did philosophy to be called philosophers, or
Yeah.
like Plato studied philosophy to be called philosophers. You see?
mhm.
Of course, philosophy, Sister Tapua, maybe you can try to help on this, but I believe philosophy became now a subject later. But those whom we refer as ordinary or original philosophers, it doesn't mean they went to a class to study something called philosophy. Sawindog?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in there that you do not necessarily need to study philosophy in order for you to be a philosopher. That's my own opinion. For so much as you have studied whatever field, economics, law, mathematics, you should have studied it. You ought to have studied it with a purpose. And this purpose in the end is to improve the society wherever you come from. So, but just like I said earlier, we have all these accolades, all these educations, just to decor our living rooms and our offices. We don't have a purpose for it, the purpose of improving the society as a whole. So, but everybody is and should be a philosopher in his own right.
Thank you. That's why I've gone to Google what is philosophy.
Excuse me, may I come in? Because I don't know that everybody is or should be a philosopher. Everybody is a talker and and has an opinion on things, but that doesn't make them a philosopher, I don't think.
Can I
Ghanaians
come in?
especially love to talk. Sorry, thank you. I'll stop
Can
there.
I come in?
Yes, Sister Tapua, and then I'll go to Sister Myra.
Right. Philosophy is a guiding principle for how one lives their lives. If we say we go to school or education to be philosophers, then what are we saying about the African principles and philosophies of life? What we have been lured into is certification. We tend to associate being certified as the it. And who is supposed to be certifying us? The upper echelons of that society that is contrived to put us down. And it begins to separate us coming from the ordinary level to their level and make sure that that division remains. In other words, their superiority remains. I find, for example, the colonial style of the Portuguese was more blatant because the Portuguese would say, if you reach a certain level of education, you've become Portuguese. You're not African anymore. You change your name, you discard your culture, you dissociate yourself from your brothers and sisters. You now belong to Portugal. You're given a Portuguese passport. This is the same mindset that we're being forced into, to think that for you to be a health worker, you have to have gone to a specific university. We've got African countries right now. I mean, what do we call people who help give birth? What do we call them?
Midwives.
Right. Yes. Africa has always had midwives. Africa has had midwives who understand how to birth. Africans know how to look after their own health. We were operating people before they knew how. But because we don't have certification, we are therefore told we are not. I think sometimes we ought to stop listening to these people, because then we begin to look down at ourselves. I mean, look at what happened during COVID. And the reason why I'm saying this is I'm thinking of Chinua Achebe and Things Fall Apart, where he says, the white man is very clever. He has brought asunder between us and taken our brother. And it is our brother who becomes the face of the conflict that is there between us and them. In other words, those of us who are educated unconsciously buy in to these salient philosophers. You know how the philosophers gave up their responsibility. So when we went there and got educated, philosophy was relegated to somewhere else, but we were subtly taught about the ways of understanding that world using the philosophy that they were trying to ignore, that they were not highlighting. So some of us walked into, it was almost like into a dreamland where you are coerced into looking at yourself as being successful. It's your graduation, it's your PhD, it's never to be shared. And yet African philosophies, I'll use the translations that I experience in my day to day. If you say good morning to someone, it's Salibonani. I see you, you see me, we see each other. It's congratulations. Our response is, it's yours too. My success is your success. But then suddenly, when we graduate and you've got a PhD, it's mine. I'm the one who's going to go up there and succeed. Therefore, what these philosophers were doing, if we're linking it to what we're studying today, is they opened the door for us as Africans who were coming in lately into this education system to forget why we were getting educated. They were educating to reinforce this individualistic, philosophy. And we bought into it because we were told, then you are successful. And when I come back to Africa or go back to my home, I actually think I am successful because I have the certification. And we can't listen to our elders because they don't have a certification. And yet they're the repose of African philosophy. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you, Sister Tapo. I'll go to members who haven't spoken yet. Please, if you have...
hold on. Sister Tapoa, before...
Yes.
Brother Kwame. Brother
You
Kwame.
said a lot, but I'm wondering what... Yeah, thank you. Sister Tapoa, you said a lot in the last few minutes, but what are you really saying?
What I'm saying is, as Pan-Africanists, we are on our own. We need to be aware that there are some of us who are educated in the ways of the West. We need to be aware that some of our leaders lack the conscientism. We need to be aware that we are working to try and bring up a generation of woke, educated people. This is why I was so worried. I remember I've given this example before of when the Generation Z in Kenya, at the climax of it all, Germany and the European countries came in to offer scholarships to our stars. And being African, who would say, I don't want that opportunity? But if they're not woke, they don't realize they're walking into being brainwashed, because it's very important for these people to pick on the guys that are showing enlightenment and kind of cool themselves,
Okay. Okay, okay, fine. So how does that relate to what we are reading here?
Right. What we are saying is we need to understand how capitalism embeds individualism in people's philosophical thought and perspective. We are coming in with a different thought. We're actually grappling ourselves as educated by the West to come to a position where we convince others and ourselves that we need to think for everybody. Because people would ask you, why are you doing this? You're successful. Why are you worried about this? You've got that. But we are part of the few who are going beyond what we've read today of the philosophers who are just looking at definition of terms. What is exploitation? What is neocolonialism? What is this? What is that? Without thinking of solutions. I'm hoping we're going to work working on solutions.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Brother Pigeon, back to you. Yeah, continue, and then I will come in at another point. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sister,
Brother Pigeon, did Sister Tapua, is she trying to tell us Western education or education in general has changed the
Sorry, I missed the last bit.
I-
Uh-oh.
sorry, Doc, I can't hear you. Okay, brother,
what I heard?
wait, sir, wait, Doc, please hold on a bit. Brother Barry has been struggling to speak. I don't know if he's trying to speak or not, because I see his microphone is on. Brother Barry, let me know if you want to speak or you are trying to speak so that I can have a clear audience either between Sawindok or yourself. Brother Barry?
No, it wasn't fixed properly. It's all right now. Try to see it. You have to lift this up to see whether the bucket is in the right place. So it's all right. I'll
Brother Barry?
lift into position.
Brother Barry? Brother Barry? Brother Barry, we can hear you. Are you trying to contribute to the text? Brother Barry? I think your audio is having some problem. Okay. I'll then mute you. And yes, Sawindo, please go ahead and come up again for Sister Tapua to catch what you are saying.
I said from what Sister Tapua has been saying, I have picked up that the Western type of education has now taught us to enshrine individualism and changing our African philosophy of Ubuntu. I am because we are, to I am because I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not certain about that, but yes, I've taken members back to Nkrumah. That's why the issue of why education is coming. Brother Kwame, I had taken members back to
Yes.
introduction of Nkrumah on colonial students. So I wanted to link it with the element
Yes.
of how the philosophers are
Precisely.
trying to argue in the society. And that's why you're seeing many people are trying to refer education.
Precisely.
So,
Precisely. You see,
yes, go
yeah,
ahead.
precisely. Yeah, precisely. You see, some of the discussions we are having, like you're saying, relate, the way we are talking is relating to students and how they go to school and how they study and so on and so forth. But what we are reading here, we dealt with that in the introduction, and Brother Pigeon, you are right to refer us to that. What we are reading here is in this paragraph, towards the end or now of the whole chapter, is asking us what we think our position is going to be. You see, so right now, what we need to be asking us as a class is, what is our position? What is our philosophical position going forward? Because the
Thank you.
philosophers have given up. But what is our position? So just note that, yes, as Brother Pigeon was referring to in terms of the introduction, when students go to school, the different students come out. So yes, some come out and they become liberals. Okay, Some come out and they are conservatives. Some also come out and they are radicals. So the education system does not produce one type of student. And in the struggle for independence, we saw that at play. Nkrumah himself went to the same school with other students, but he became a what? A freedom fighter, an anti-colonialist. Not all students were like that, you know. So
Yes.
even in the university, not all lecturers are interested in changing anything, but some are. So I don't think Mr. Tapua was implying that all students, you only get one type of students. I, like some of us here, are a product of Western education. Does it mean that we have forgotten our roots? Does it mean that we have subscribed to individualism? No, it doesn't mean that. Thank you.
Yes, Sister Mera, please come in. Then I'll go to Brother Coco and then Brother Anunnaki. Sister Mera?
Thank you. So I think what I'm going to say has already been touched on, but the sentence is therefore not ultra amazing. For me, it says that the contemporary Western thinkers are not too bothered about changing the inequalities or imbalances that they see in the world, because you know, for them, they realize that they are, you know, for our, these people that we're fighting have a sort of hive mind, you see. They share the same values, so they understand that at the moment they're the ones on top and the rest of us are the ones at the bottom, and there's no way they're going to challenge the status quo by fighting for moral principles and moral terms. No. They would rather pay that lip service, you know, go to the fancy big universities, teach it in the lecture rooms and leave it there. So for me, it points out, it highlights the idealism. You see, it's in the mind. We can talk all day, debate moral terms and principles, but I feel no obligation to actually enact this in real life to correct the inequalities and the injustices. And I contrast that with us as Africans that are studying conservatism, as philosophical materialism, that we, on the other hand, are here every Thursday to learn how to conceptualize the problems of our people and our Kabilan and the Africans and diaspora, to solve the material problems and come up with real life solutions, you know, and to understand the values and the idea systems that we want in the society that we want to build, you know, and not just pay its lip service. So this should be our end goal, you know, to really build these solutions into the real life and solve the problems of neocolonialism and the imposed improvisation that we see on the continent, and so many other problems that have come out of our history, which we all know very well. So that's, for me, that's, I see that difference. We should leave the solutions. We should really think about them and enact them, and also live with the people that we are, because we are them and they are us, you know, not to go out and make a little speech here and there about conservatism and then go back and steal some money. No. That's not going to be us. So to live what we are going to preach, and we are learning how to find the actual solutions that will liberate Africa in real time, in real life, in future generations to come, and not just leave it in our ideas, you know, for status, so as these Western philosophers are doing. Thank you.
Sister Mera, thank you very much. Please, if you find that definition of a revolutionary by Sankara, please post it in the chat so that I can recall it.
Okay, I'll try.
Yeah, thank you. Let me go to Brother Coco. and then Raspala. Brother Coco, are you in a position now to speak?
Greetings, comrades.
Greetings.
I won't dwell too long on this because it has already been deliberated at length, and most of the submissions that have been made are on point. And thank you for such an interesting topic today, because we are where we are because we never really learn to think for ourselves. I think this is the moral of what we're reading here, in that the philosophers, we stopped thinking for ourselves. We took what we were given and we accepted that as the gospel truth. And that is a problem, the big problem. But when you look in the West, where we come from, where I currently live now, you'll find that some of this education can vary. You have private education, which is for elites, those with the money. And then you have education for everyone else, especially the poor. So you find boys and girls from poor working backgrounds struggle to break into the elites because of that kind of education they are given. So I think it's Sister Tapua who said that we make education a sort of oligarchy, but it was Plato, if you remember, who said that. He sort of advocated that education should be that new system of oligarchy, because we are not all equal, and that is a problem. The other part is we are splitting out philosophy from some of the core subjects which were founded earlier on. It makes it difficult for people to be grounded in philosophy when they are using them. So I think whether Windhoek or someone else mentioned that you get educated, but you don't know what to do with that education. You don't understand. It's like the education system it has failed us as a people, because we are just memorizing stuff and then regurgitating them. No application whatsoever. So that doesn't allow us to think, to learn to think. We don't think, which is tragic, really. And then I think Siddha Sapua talk about certification versus real education. So by just looking at certificates, then we don't understand what we are learning. We are just going to be Doctor Who, Sir Windhoek. No pun intended that you Sir Windhoek. But it leads to people with long letters, but no achievements whatsoever, especially in the environment in which they live in. And last but not least is this question of individualism versus the Ubuntu African philosophy, which we have. We have a session tomorrow. Let me remind those of you who were not intending on attending that we are also touching some of this. So it was Descartes who said, "I think, therefore I am." It's people like that who are dangerous, because they say democratic capitalism is the best. So ideologies such as socialism are being supplanted and replaced by capitalism. And for capitalism to thrive, it doesn't need people who think too much. There is affluence enough. We don't have to think too much. We just have to get a job and continue paying bills. So this is the system which it has created. It creates people who are not challenged enough. People like Marx, he struggled, but he thought a lot. He thought deep. He was a radical. And then they quote Adam Smith all day long. But when you look at Adam Smith, you find that he wasn't advocating specialism. That specialism is dangerous because it makes people who are one route, who don't think outside the box. They just do what they are told. And that is the problem. So the root cause is the education system which we have. And most of it comes from the West, because the African system of education was different. You learned everything, all the trades. and most of it was hands-on. So you learn to think. So I think we are told to think, my comrades. I yield.
Thank you. Raspala?
Yes, I'm believe. Give thanks. Give thanks even to the pyramid. Yeah. Okay. My take, cause yeah, like my brother just said just now that we discussed a lot already, and all of these discussions were good, very good. So my take would be this issue of philosophy and the playing of the white man with wisdom. Because when you check this word philosophy, basically means love of wisdom, you see. Even in the Bible, it explains like that. So when I reread this first line using that mindset, you get to see how these ones, they started to play with wisdom. For instance, it says, using that, in the 18th and 19th centuries, the social contention in the love of wisdom became explicit, you see. And then it says here, the social contention of the love of wisdom was accepted even as late as. So as you read it that way, you get to see these ones, after we blacks, so-called Moors, conquered Europe, and then they started to regain Europe, you see. It's only after the 17th, 18th centuries, they started really to use their mind to think, because they were brute most. The Roman Empire, you know, they were just killing everyone. So it just comes to tell us that for the 500 years of their rule, you can start to see it came only late, this issue of, okay, let's start now to look at issues of how we govern the people without killing them aimlessly. So now that's just how I see it, this thing of them. Otherwise, if you come to Africa, we've always used philosophy. We've always used philosophy. Yeah, I'll end there. Sure.
Thank you. Brother Barry? Is it Barry? Barry? Shukran? Brother Barry, are you able to unmute yourself once again? If you're not, I'll go to Brother Komi. Brother Komi, please you can come in so that you, of course, lead us towards the land.
Yeah, it's hard to. Sorry, hold on, please. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Brother Komi.
There is no echo, is there?
There's no echo.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's hard to come in. I missed a lot of the interesting discussions that we had, and we only have 10 minutes left. So I won't be able to say much, except to remind us all as to why we are reading what we are reading. We are coming. Is Brother Carrington here, by the way? Is Brother Carrington
No,
here?
he's not.
You're right. Okay. We are coming slowly to the end of the chapter. And the chapter is philosophy and society. And Nkrumah is reminding us again. So why is Nkrumah for talking about this matter of the situation with Western philosophers? You know, I mean, why? Because the theme in this paragraph, in this chapter, if we all recall, has always been what a philosopher did in order that he would transform society. And we looked at various ones, Plato, Aristotle, and so on. So now we come to the 20th century. and then we have a situation where Western philosophy is not interested in changing anything. And I know when I listened in the past, a lot of us grappled with what that meant. And so what it meant also means is that Western philosophy has no interest in changing Western society. I mean, how else can we put it? The structure of the world as it is affirmed by Western philosophy. And if it is deviating, then you make America great again. If you think it's deviating, you make, So that is what we are reading. So Nkrumah is reminding us that, bearing in mind the role or the relationship between philosophy and transformation, and given where we are, that Western philosophy is not interested in changing anything. What is our view? What is it we think should be done? So that is a question for us, because it's very easy for ourselves also to be unconcerned. African philosophers, let's remind ourselves, are also unconcerned about the plight of the African, because they don't say anything. By the way, have we all noticed that it is not just philosophy as a subject, because every subject has a philosophy. Yeah. If you take sociology, it has a philosophy. If you take politics, it has a philosophical aspect. Every academic subject or every subject under this on this planet has a philosophical aspect. When was the last time when what was happening in Kenya, for instance, when the Gen Zs said enough is enough with all this political nonsense from Ruto, yeah, and they went on protest. Are we aware of any political philosophers that came out and made a statement saying that the Gen Zs are right, Ruto is wrong, blah 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 blah? Did we hear anyone? I'm asking us. Did we hear any philosophers, any African philosophers say anything? How many African philosophers have said anything about what is happening in Burkina Faso, Mali, and so on? Right. So let's remember that. Sorry?
I did.
What did you do? Remind us.
I wrote to the Kenyan embassy in Namibia. I wrote to the Burkinabe embassy in South Africa.
What do you tell them?
I'll post it.
Okay. So basically, you reacted philosophically to what was happening.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we have
Brother Kwame.
Yeah. So we had sorry. So we had.
Brother
Yeah,
Kwame.
go on. Yes.
I think when you're talking of philosophers, also try to bring in what Sister Ida was raising on, who is a philosopher. Sister Ida thought that philosophers are those who have gone to study philosophy in that case. I don't know if that's the same thinking here.
Yes.
And
Well,
I'd like to know if
according
Wendy
to
Wack is a philosopher.
our introduction in this book. Yeah. Go on.
I said I'd like to know if Watson Winlock has just said if he's a philosopher. He says he wrote to these people as a philosopher.
Yeah, he said he will post it. So when he posts it, we'll pick it up.
Okay.
Because if he has, as he says he has, then that is feeding into the question that we have raised, which is, what is it we are doing? So if Sir Windhoek is already doing something, then that fits into what we should be doing. The time is 5 to 8, so I wouldn't want to take too much time. But what I would like to say is that we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we plan to do? The question of who is a philosopher, let's not let's not spend too much time on that. A philosopher is someone who has studied philosophy in a university for our purposes here. Yeah, for our purposes here, a philosopher is someone who has gone to an educational institution and has studied the subject. For in the same way as a physicist is someone who has studied physics and understands physics, the principles of physics. In the same way as a medical doctor is someone who has gone to School of Medicine. That is what we mean by a philosopher. Now, a medical doctor who has gone to study medicine and, for example, is, let's say, a dentist, solves problems to do with dentistry. That's what they do. What do philosophers do after they've studied? That is a question for us. Let me pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. I would like to point out on something. Sister Tapo, unless there's some few seconds you want to contribute something, very briefly, please, because I want to bring to an end. Sister Tapo? Okay. Can you hear me?
Sorry. Okay, sorry. I'm struggling to accept that a philosopher is a person who's been certified by the very system that aims to alienate us and our thought
Okay,
and our
Sister
beliefs.
Tapo. Sister Tapo,
Yes.
we'll take that conversation to the next class, please.
Yeah,
Oh.
Brother Pigeon, let me just quickly respond and we can take it. So, Statapoa, what I am saying is that for our purposes here in this class, that is what it is. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
and I'm trying to say the opposite.
Yeah, so let's take it up in the next.
Okay, let's take it up to the next class. What I wanted to point out to you.
That's an inhibition.
Now let's we'll have that conversation, but let me take it up to what I wanted to highlight here before we end this class.
Yes, can you hold on, brother
No.
Pigeon? Those who are saying that they don't disagree and so on, let's remember that let's remember that those who are not interested in saying anything, who have the knowledge, the understanding, the history, and who are saying nothing that Nkrumah is referring to here, are not the ordinary man in the street who is philosophizing. So let's be clear. But let's pick this up in the next class. Thank you.
Yes.
Can I just register a
Yes.
thought here? I think if we're going to end a meeting, we need to end a meeting with the person who's presenting, just finishing off a sentence or an idea. Because the interception, when one is presenting a thought, but we can't hear it through, becomes a problem, I think, for me. Thank you.
Okay, but it's based on time, Sister Tapua. We've discussed, and I think I've allowed you also sometimes to share extensively on the text without limiting some of your time. Same I've done to so many other people, but of course some thoughts come towards the end, and I like also to give some people time for that. I haven't shared much of my thinking, and I just wanted to share a statement as part of my thinking to this text, but we can pick up this for the next class, if that is okay. So, your concern is well noted, Sister Tapo, and I'll try my best to see how we do this. If it's from my side that I interjected, sorry for that. What I wanted to say is, let us look at only one part that I wanted to share my thinking. I know it's right on time. That in the 18th and 19th century, the social contention in philosophy became explicit, especially as law, politics, economics, and ethics came to be publicly founded on philosophy. My question as a takeaway from us here, are we having our laws, our politics, our economics, and our ethics currently founded on our philosophy? That's a big takeaway. If we don't have, then we need to find a way on how, and I know people have been having the trying to decolonize politics and education. We need to find a way on how the law we practice as a people, the politics we practice as a people, our economics should be founded on our philosophy. rather than on their philosophy. Because up to date, I believe most of what you operate with is still founded on their philosophy rather than on our philosophy as a people. That's only my little concern that I want to raise to us, and maybe we can look at it as a subject to this. But I think we have extensively discussed ways on how we try to look at, Brother Kwame, you can remember, we are trying actually to see how we can constitute some three big subcommittees that can take up this to look at the law aspect, which is the constitution, and have a unified constitution, a decolonized constitution, economics, which Brother Kwame will also help to lead. There's a big committee that we want to form on economics that try to actually maybe then ground economics on our philosophy, and the same way with issues to do with education as well. So those who are interested in that line as well, please get in touch, because we are trying to think that those three areas will be our big focus area for the next 5 years as a class, and we're looking forward to more conferences on the same, more thinking, seminars, research, so that we can actually have the law that is founded on our philosophy, the politics, economics, and our education that is founded on our philosophy. And that can be a good contribution that then we can push forward towards the liberation, the unification, and the development of Africa. Having said that, comrades, permit me to bring this meeting to an end at this particular moment. Back to you, Brother Kwame, in case of anything.
No, that is it. Well done for the sharing. Yeah, well done. I noticed we're not a lot today. We're only about eight or seven of us. But anyway, thank you guys for the hard work, the interaction, and the ancestors are very happy with us. Thank you.
All, let's meet again. I'll be able to share the topic for this. Brother Kwame had shared the topic last time for this Saturday about reforms.
Yeah, the topic is about reforms, and it's very broad. So we had suggested that the economists, brother, the South African brother, trying to remember his name, if Bongani, that's it. Brother Bongani had written an article on reforming the financial institution. So we had suggested that he come and present something, but he did say